how would you describe the tone differences among Steinway, Yamaha, Bechstein, and so on?
This is a really good question that I've given a lot of thought to. And describing sound, in words is kind of, give me creative license here. I actually have in development something I'm calling the tone line, which shows all the piano brands and their relative tone. On one end of the spectrum you have clarity, and on the other end of the spectrum you have thickness, which isn't to say that these are absolutes, but generally speaking, the European pianos tend to be clearer, thinner, brighter. These are words to describe them. And the American pianos, fatter, diffuse, creamy. So along those lines, though, you have, I think, the American pianos, and this isn't necessarily the current crop of Mason and Hamlins, but in the vintage instruments, Mason and Hamlin is probably the fattest, most diffuse sound you'll ever hear on a piano. Steinway's got a little bit more of a muscular kind of growl to it. And then you get to Baldwin, you've got a little bit more clarity, but it's still a fat tone. Then you start getting to the European pianos. On one extreme, you've got Bechstein and Bösendorfer, and pianos like Pleyel, even Schimmel is in that category of the thinner, sometimes described as a bell-like tone. And then you get to some of the other European pianos that get closer to the American sound, like Blüthner, which has perhaps a rounder tone, a little bit fatter, not quite the clarity of Bechstein and Bösendorfer, but not as fat as Baldwin, and certainly not as fat as Mason and Hamlin. So it's kind of like, that's the way I perceive it. And of course, it's easy to find exceptions to that rule because voicing has a great deal to do with pianos. If pianos are rebuilt, the type of hammers that are put on. Voicing is not only the shape of the hammers, but the hardening or softening with either chemicals or by needling them. And by needling them, you'll get a warmer tone rather than a brighter tone. But the intrinsic clarity versus diffuse fatness, I think, is intrinsic to the scale design of these instruments.
Very interesting. I was wondering, what about the Japanese?
The Japanese,
where can they be placed?
It's interesting. They tend to be more of the brighter variety, but there's a different tone that the Asian production pianos have because it's a completely different methodology. Think about it. A Steinway or a Mason Hamlin that lists for 60,000, Yamaha will list for 25,000, and a Chinese piano for 12,000. So there's got to be a difference. One difference is the way the plates are made. The plates of a Mason and Hamlin, a Baldwin, Steinway, any of the great American pianos are made with a wet sand casting. It's a process that takes weeks to cure the metal. Whereas a Yamaha and almost all of the Asian production pianos use a vacuum mold process. While just as sturdy, the metal is not as dense. So there is a certain metallic edge to the tone that these pianos are going to always have, which is beneficial for certain styles of music. You'll notice Elton John chooses Yamaha because that tone is going to cut through a mix better than a Steinway or better than a Mason and Hamlin. But if you're looking for the round warmth, when you really play a Yamaha, it's going to give you that edge. Whereas on the American pianos and the handmade German pianos, as you get bigger, it opens up. It makes it harder to get louder in a way because you don't get to that point of that brightness the same way you do. Even when they're voiced brighter, there's a difference to the tone. And there are other differences, the type of woods that are used. Without getting too technical, I'll mention one other facet. The rim of the Asian pianos are made out of the soft Luan mahogany indigenous to the area instead of the hardwoods found in the American and German pianos. The soundboard being embedded into the rim of the piano will vibrate, and when it hits the rim of the American pianos, the vibration comes back to the soundboard, and so you have a more sustained tone. Then the Asian pianos, where the rim vibrates, hits the soft rim, the soundboard vibrates, hits the soft rim, it cushions the sound, so you get a stronger attack and not quite the same singing sustain because it doesn't have the rim supporting that continued resonance.
Sure, very interesting. So you can't actually compare the Asian pianos with the major?
Not generally. However, to be fair, Kawai has their Shigeru series, which is a handmade
so they have
piano.
A level
yes,
series.
And Yamaha has their S series, and these instruments are handmade instruments to the highest possible standards. And if you want to compare Yamaha or Kawai to Steinway or Mason and Hamlin, you really have to look at the Shigeru Kawai and the S series Yamaha.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Oh, nice to know. Thank you.